Okay, so here's what we want to talk about here. What's 11, 18? We'll go for about an hour. Let's see how it goes. We don't have to set the time. We'll just flow with this. So here's Tim, on my right, Tim Euster, the one and only Miguel Delgado, which is a very interesting story. We won't get into the whole testimony of that. And then Matthew Kunkam, and of course, Eric Gagnon. So what I felt to do, to ask you a question, then you go for it, and then we'll go to the next one. So let's start with you, Tim. So as a business person, what do you do, and go back to when you broke the first barrier, and just talk about how important that was to step out of this restraint that you were in, that we're all in. What was the first thing that you broke?
You mean the first time that I broke the barrier financially?
Yes, yeah, just in your own mindset and for your wife, and just the way we're going.
So I mean, the very first time was really when I was 19. So I'd been sitting under the anointing here, hearing you preach about big things and really the mandate. And I don't know when you came out, started talking about the 300 millionaires. It was probably actually after this, but I just felt like the area the Lord wanted to use me in was, even though I love ministering and I actually do, every opportunity I can, I do it, but that I needed to go into the realm of business. But I also knew that I lacked the practical skill. So I had the heart, I had the mind. And so for me, I would say the breakthrough really started by sitting down one day and just saying to myself, how am I going to just get there? I was 19 years old, so I knew I had time on my side. And so it was like, an ocean, and I'm going to cross this ocean slowly, and a couple degrees of the boat to the left or the right will make a massive difference where you land on the other shore. So I sat there, and I just I decided I'm going to write down 3 skills that millionaires have, and I was fortunate to have met 2 millionaires at that time that I knew.
So So you want to tell the people what those 3 skills were?
Yes, I wrote down.
Hold it, you're going to have to pay for this.
I wrote down.
You're going to be charged by that moment now.
I wrote down leadership, because they were both amazing leaders. They led a group of people.
Write it down, leadership.
And they both had amazing work ethic. Like I just, when you're really in your own thing, there's no such thing as like, if you're awake, you basically can be working. I mean, once it's your thing. Whereas most people go to a 9-to-5, they give it mediocre effort. And then
you think 9 to 5 is the biggest thing that holds people back?
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to break through 9 to 5. I mean, if you're in a 9 to 5 now, that's to pay your bills. It's what you really do after your 9 to 5 that's going to actually determine if you go anywhere, until the thing outside of it gets you out of your 9 to 5.
Did you catch what he's saying right now? This is a life changer, what he's saying.
Yeah, and so I was sitting there giving minimum effort, and I wasn't happy with myself, and so I said, I'm going to change this, and so I want to be a millionaire by 30 was my goal. And so I wrote down leadership, I wrote down work ethic, and the last one was sales. It was the only practical skill that I saw that the 2 men had. What I basically did was I looked at both of their lives. They both had made money in different ways, but they had these 3 things in common. And off that short little list and only 2 points of data, I just said, I'm going to go get jobs to teach me these skills. I'm going to put myself through what I called millionaire boot camp, where I would teach myself skills that millionaires had. And when I figured when I got to the end of learning leadership, learning work ethic, learning sales, I would either have more items on the list because I would have met other millionaires and added to the list, or I might at that point have an idea of how I could go make money. And so I figured sales was actually the easiest one, because I was like, I don't know where you go, what job teaches you leadership, what job teaches you work ethic. I was like, sales is, so I'll just do sales. So I actually walked into the office of one of those millionaires, which was Adam Barger at the time. I was working for him, and I shared my plan with him, and I said, so, I have to quit because I want to be you, not work for you anymore. And
you just told him that flat out.
Yeah. And
how did he respond?
He actually just sat there, and then he said, that's actually a really good plan. He's like, I'll give you 2 weeks pay, just come in tomorrow and wrap up your day, and I wish you the best of luck, and like keep me informed on how you do. And so I then called Alex Burgos, who had just told me about a door-to-door sales job for Verizon Fios, and Alex ended up quitting like a week after I joined,
No.
but
He gets you in
he
the
trained
job.
me and then he left. Yeah, and but that was the beginning of it. And I just wanted something I could put my hand to, where if I could outwork the person next to me, my income would go up. And so that was really what led to the first breakthrough. And then my first full year, I was 19, and I made $108,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so my mom, then said, you need to start paying rent, and because I was still living at home, I drove home with a 350Z, but yeah, that was the decision that led to the first breakthrough. Like a lot of times, the money is the evidence of something you did, you made a change before, either here or here or practically. So
you're 19 years old. You have 100,000.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I made 108,000. Then the next year it was 2008, 7 and 8. So the economy kind of came down, and I made about 87 and 90. And then every year since then has just been a step up. Yeah. And but I think
So
that decision was the
that
first
little awakening when your mother said,
Yeah.
"Oh, you made 108,000. You can pay rent."
Yeah, you could pay rent. Yeah. And then it was, so it was, and then, not long after that, my Pastor Ryan came and joined me, and in sales. And I mean, and so a lot of, it's been a thing where there's always a stage of learning spiritual principles, which I've learned so many in conjunction with sales, and then there were practical principles as well, because the gentleman who was up here a few nights ago, the really funny guy, he said there's the person of Jesus and the principles of Jesus, and the world uses the principles in the Bible, and many times they use it better than the church does, and then they go succeed on those principles of diligence and hard work and becoming skilled at what you do. And so I just felt like that was what I was lacking, and so then I went out, and so that was the first major breakthrough. And I mean, there's been many since then, but I think like at a starting point when I was young, it was that decision to go work jobs to gain a specific skill. And then I said to myself, the day I realize that I've learned it, I'll just quit that job and I'll go to the skill number 2 and I'll go get another job, led by the Lord, of course. But that was my plan on how to figure it out.
The Lord told you what to do. I mean, the Holy Spirit really guided you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And back then I was just, I was a graduate of the Bible school that was just making $12 an hour, playing like 8 hours a day of video games. So I was not anything special at that time on the outside, but
So
the
there's
Lord
hope for
loved me.
many other
There's
people.
a lot of hope, yeah.
Awesome. Miguel, what would be the thing for you? Think back 5 years ago, okay?
Yeah, I believe that, one of the very important things for everyone that, is believing in business or is looking forward for a breakthrough is you begin to really focus on yourself. Everything begins and ends with yourself. That's a very important thing. I think when you are a man, you really begin to take responsibility and you begin to say, I am here where I am today because of the decisions I've made today myself. Jesus already has done everything, on the cross to bless me and for me to have abundance. The devil is under my feet. Now what do I need to do? And I think that's a very important thing to do is keep yourself accountable. Keep yourself accountable where you're at. And so, about 5 years ago, I remember that, I was just, not, doing my regular job, and I could not see breakthrough.
What was your regular job?
My regular job was going and, I did door-to-door before this. I was already in the business for about 12 years. But there comes a time that you hit a ceiling in your life. And it's nothing else but yourself, and you need to get hungry. So I remember I was knocking on doors, just like Tim and I did. And, and I was so frustrated, and the Lord told me, you're not going to do this anymore. So I grabbed my binder, and I threw it at the door. And, I left everything there, and I left.
You mean the customer's house?
Yeah, the customer's house, yeah.
You just threw the binder at the door?
It's just like the Lord spoke to me. No.
Did they call you back? Did they call you back to buy?
Then I went half a block. I'm like, I need to go pick it up. So I went pick it all up, and then I left. But I think going back to 5 years and a half, obviously I'm doing, in the same realm of business now, but what the Lord really told me was, you're not going to do this your way anymore. You're going to do it my way now. And it was, 6 months of preparation. I remember the number one thing that happened is I began to recognize and humble myself in my heart and begin to make changes on focus, the way that I did business. Let me tell you, one of the things that holds people back a lot is you need to change the way that you do business. You got to see yourself differently when whatever God has you. And so, I began to see myself differently. I got my heart right. I began to, ask the Lord, where are the areas where I need to change? And then he began to work with my character. Success is directly connected with your character. And that's why you have to have a foundation of a godly character to be able to, have the exponential growth. And so, I became, more honest. I became more, I was no longer a salesman. I became an educator. So don't see yourself a salesman. You are an educator. You're an educator of whatever is it that, you're doing. And then, I begin to work in areas in my heart, like focus. I needed to be focused. When you become focused, you become deaf to people's opinions. And so you need to be a focus, relentless focus on what is in your hand. And at that moment, it was just really working in my character. And then the second thing, a lot of people ask me, Miguel, how you've gotten from here to where you are today. And the second thing is, I got in the same page with my wife. It was another level of unity. The Lord brought me and my wife a completely other level of unity. And when there is two or three together, God will give you everything you ask for. That is according to the plan. And so, 5 years ago, it was a character adjustment for me. Before that, I jumped from, this company, and I was never really rooted in a place. Jumping around, you're never going to achieve anything. You got to stay in one place, and you got to root yourself there, and then you got to grow from there.
So, obviously, he jumped, but he was learning. Some people jump but never learn.
Yes.
So he was jumping but learning because he was going through a process.
Yeah.
I know even with us in the ministry, we pastored for 2 years, we ran a Bible school for 2 years, and we traveled for 2 years, which is everything we're doing today.
Yeah.
So the first 6 years of our ministry, everybody thought we were crazy. But everything we're doing today is everything we learned in the first 6 years,
Yeah.
So where you bloom where you're planted.
Yes. I was rooted in a place. I had a vision. Although it was the same that I was doing before, but it came completely different. But my character was different. You would make time to go and watch soccer in the middle of working hours. I stopped doing that. You become so passionate about something that everything else just kind of fades, and then you begin to put your hand to the plow, and you begin to focus on what God has put in your hands. So the first thing was really taking responsibility of myself and saying, I am where I am today because of the decisions that I've made. So now, Lord, help me to be, to get out of, this place, this situation. And then the second was getting at another level of unity with my wife. And that changed everything. Because if it doesn't work in the house, it's not going to work anywhere else. And so, those things were such of a big change. And then I began to learn what was the right way to build. And the right way to build myself, the right way to build teams, was always understanding the concept of what covenant was in my life, what really unity, submission to authority, and honor, and integrating that into my character began to make the big change in my life. And then I began to build those around me with that focus. You can teach people to make money, but the most important thing as a body of Christ that we can do today is teach them the character that will sustain them and maintain them there, and that will continue to grow, into what God, has called us all to do. So that was, the biggest breakthrough. I've always knew that God was going to do something great with me. And then I just decided to be available, and obviously your character becomes very important. It's a character thing at the end of the day.
So I want you to notice he keeps on this character thing. And I think he summed it up because a lot of people don't deal with that. And the character thing, like a part of your commitment and your sole focus has to do with your character. You're distracted by every little thing. People like that, and I meet many people. They're not focused. They're dealing with this. They're dealing with that. There's always a major problem, and you have to work through all your problems while you're en route. And it's like when I walked out today, I said, you don't bring your depression into the pulpit or whatever. And the same way into the business. There's a lot of people that just sit around and talk the problem, but you work your way through it, And for years, all I did, we've been through many problems, but I preached my way through it. Nobody will ever know it. And maybe one or two close to me, but nobody will ever know it. I just get up and preach. If they knew what I was dealing with, they'd go, oh, no. Oh, this is terrible. But they're never going to know it. I'm going to preach my way through it. And you have to do that same with your job, and doing the work. So that's great. Pastor Eric, so what... Okay, I mean, you've come through you guys did amazing in your business, and you had a $100 million business. You were rocking it, living in a mansion, driving Porsche 911 twin turbo. I mean, you had everything. Jennifer's spending every month, well, she had $30,000 a month to just go to needless markups and do whatever she wanted to. When she walked into the department store, 30 people ran up to Mrs. Gagnon, and they would have had scarves and bags and whatever. So you leave all that to come to Bible school, and you just basically go from there to nothing. Your 100 employees that you had. And so you also had a goal. Of course, you were a heathen at the time, but the Lord was leading you. yeah. God had his hand. God had his hand on you, and God was leading you. So what would you say? Let's just forget about, when you became a Christian. Let's talk about, because it's the same principles anyway. What broke you? What was the barrier that you had to break from where you were before to when you begin to make money? When what you touch begin to multiply? What was it?
So I graduated high school when I was 16. I graduated a year early. My dad was a strong military guy, so he said my way or the highway. I thought the highway looked better. So I was in the military when I was 17. I spent 3 years in the Navy, and I made $11,500 a year in the military on the back of an aircraft carrier as a jet engine mechanic. Working literally 7 days a week, 14, 15 hours a day. And when I did the math, I thought, wow, I'm not really making any money here. But I'm leading up to something. So I said to myself, I really would, if I'm going to work this hard, I really feel I should make some money. So I was the first person in my family to ever get out of the military. So I got out of the military.
Because they were career
military. Career military. And this is old school. Younger people might not understand this mentality, but back then it was you get a secure job with a great company or the military or government, and then you get a retirement. That's kind of the mentality I came out of with my family. Like 20, 30 years ago, maybe 30, 40 years ago, that was the mentality. But I had to break out of that mentality, so I get out of the military for a guaranteed job at a government job, believe it or not. And I got laid off 2 weeks before I started, so because of seniority. So I learned how the government worked.
What do you mean you got laid off?
Well, what happened was I took to get out of the military. I was getting out, but I didn't want to just get out. I was an aircraft mechanic that tore engines down and ran them on the test cells. So I got out. I was going to get an A&P.
Did you know that, man? Oh, yeah.
No, I was an eye-level mechanic, so I went through schooling in the military for that, a lot of schooling.
So you were working on the Top Guns before they took off?
Yeah. I was working on all of the engines, taking them apart, running them on the test cell.
On what jets?
I ran F-14s, S-3s, A-7s, E-2s, all of them, all the ones back then. And So when I got out of the military, I got a civil service job, a government job doing the same thing, paying like 3 times more, but had it. But when I got out, they had layoffs, and I was a new hiree coming in, so they basically laid me off before I got my first paycheck. So I found myself with I'm now, my mom's words, my mom was always, go in the military, they'll feed you, you have a roof over your head. And you know, this is leading to something, because this is where people can't break through, because my whole world was that. And then when I got out of the military, she said, you're going to starve, you're going to die. You know, I mean, you know, moms, you know. And so when I got out of the military, it was a big deal. And then I'm working at the sheriff's department as a 911 dispatcher. I don't know if you know all this. So yeah. Because when I got laid off, or when my dad said, I got to get my boy a job, so he got me a job at the sheriff's department. So back then, it was when you were I was working with 18 girls. I was the only guy working midnight shift. So, I mean, you don't know any of this stuff.
You must have had fun.
No, well, actually, it was such a high, intense, stress
There was no
job
time for
that people would stand up and start screaming and freak out. It was a high turnover.
You mean inside?
Oh, yeah, you're inside a control room, and a call comes in, somebody's in an accident, someone's dying or something. And so, but then back then, you had to type code, you know, like 10-4, 1051, 1097, signal 4. So you type it all in, and you call FHP and all this stuff. So anyways, the end result was it was a crazy job, very, and then I learned real quick.
Yeah, I realize now, because over the ministry all these years, he runs into my office and goes, 911.
He's speaking code.
Yeah, he starts talking this code. I go, what's that? Well, this is happening. 911.
Well, here's what I'm leading up to in business was I kept hitting these brick walls, because actually I was going to become a deputy. That's what I thought I was going to become. I wanted to help people. And they would never let me out of that position, because I was very good at it, and I could keep my cool with all the stuff happening. So I would say, what about...
That's a fact. You can keep your cool.
But what I'm leading up is that people have this job, and then they didn't want to let me out of that position, like Tim saying, you know, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go to the next thing. And so when they wouldn't let me promote, they said, look, you just can't promote. You're really good at this, and we don't want you to promote. I was also a mechanic. I was working 2 jobs. I was a car mechanic. So I had 2 jobs, and then I still needed more money. So I answered a blind ad in the newspaper that said, looking for management material. And I thought, I didn't say praise God, but I said, wow. I said, man, I need to jumpstart this thing and go right to manager position. That's me. But it was a blind ad for a direct sales company. And I went and got interviewed. And man, they called me back for the second interview and said, man, I was the right guy for the job. It was totally direct sales. And it's funny. So I got into direct sales when I was 20, door-to-door sales. And I was not really good at it.
Knocking on doors.
Knocking on doors. I was selling vacuums, water trap vacuums, and a high-end unit, very good unit. But I believed in it and understood the engineering of it. But here's what I'm going to lead up to. I was not good at it. But
You weren't?
I wasn't really good at it because... I didn't know how to close. I didn't know how to ask for the order. But my dad had always instilled in me, because I worked with my dad since I was 7 years old, 3 days a week. My dad worked 3 jobs so my mom could stay home and raise 5 kids. So I always worked hard. My mom and dad instilled in us work principles. So like you always say, you know, I didn't feel like I had a talent. Maybe I had a half a talent, but I knew I could outwork everybody. You always say that about ministry. Like when I got into business, I outworked everybody. And so then I started to get successful. Well, one thing I did, and I want to touch on, is I wanted to be successful. I wanted, you know, going out to eat at my household. We weren't poor. We were middle class, lower class, because going out to eat is not like, hey, you guys want to go out to eat today? Going out to eat's like 3 times a year, you know, so it costs a lot of money to take people out to eat. So I don't come from any type of money per se, but I had a big dream and I wanted to break out of that mentality. So I started this direct sales, and then I started to get better at it. But one thing I did was, you always say you read a lot of different books, you study little things. I knew I needed to find the best in the industry. Who are the best people in direct sales? Who are the most successful people? And so I ran across 2 multimillionaires that ran a Fortune 500 company. I started working really hard. I started succeeding. They saw talents and abilities in me, and I actually humbled myself and said, teach me, whatever you can teach me. And my first full year in business, I made $101,000.
There's something about that 108,000.
So-
what was your first year? What did you do your first year?
About 90.
Okay.
So I was 101,000, and
So
then
I mean, we can actually teach people to at least do 100,000 a year.
yeah. So from
Why is
11,000.
it so quiet here?
Well,
If
from
you listen, we'll teach you how to do it. Okay.
From 11,500 to 101 and there's pitfalls that go along the way that you got to learn, because I did not know. I was always had a job where they took my taxes out, so I never really. And we teach this in Kingdom Business now for anybody in direct sales. But I made 101,000, and I thought I was the richest person on planet Earth. And of course, I spent every bit of it, you know. So I mean, I was like living. And back then, unfortunately, I was in the world, so I had like 6 people living in my house, driving my car. You know, it was unfortunately bad situations. And but the next, I went to go pay my taxes, you know, because I knew you had to pay taxes. So I went to like an HR block, and a rude awakening hit me that I owed $44,000 in taxes. And I thought, man, this is robbery. How can they do this? I still feel that way, but and so I had to go on a government repayment plan, really at 22 years old, 21, to pay my taxes. And then the next year I made way more, but now I'm paying taxes on that and taxes from last year. But by the time I was 22, I bought my first Porsche and my first house, so I was on the way. But I would just say, on understanding this, I learned from the best in the industry, and I was willing to humble myself and learn. I studied books. I studied, in our industry, work habits, prospecting, closing, and duplicating, because in order to become, I feel, a multi-millionaire, you can't do it on your own. You have to duplicate. You know, this ministry is all about duplication. You have to duplicate yourself through other people. You have to build teams. You have to help, as the saying is, help enough other people get what they want, and you'll get what you want. So it's not all about you. And so I had to learn how to duplicate myself, and so then went on to have a multi-million-dollar company, 5 locations. When I met my wife, Jennifer, she was in college, working 3 jobs, living in her car. A lot of people don't know that my wife
lived in her car.
Well, she had a place, but
She was
she would
homeless,
work
living in her
18.
car.
No, she wasn't homeless. She had a place, but my wife, as everybody probably knows or most know here, is such a florid lady that she was going to college. She had a 4.0 degree, and average, and she had a scholarship because she didn't have any money. She didn't come from any money either, so she had no money to go to school. So she had to work 3 jobs and get a part scholarship. And so she got into direct sales just to pay the bills to go through college, and started making more money. She became the #1 in her direct sales industry, and she became #1. And
So what was she making?
she
a
was
year?
making about $110,000 a year
you
as
were
a
making
20.
what?
I was making, well, at that time, you know, I mean, $500,000, $1
So you're
million.
making $500,000.
Something.
She's making over $100,000.
Now, she was probably making more than that, but just she wasn't building a team. She was a salesperson in another company. But my wife is an expert marketer. I was a very good salesperson and am a very good salesperson and trainer. So I had she had an element that I didn't have, which was marketing. And so when we fell in love, I'm getting a little too long on this.
You know,
but-
what was very interesting, because we're flying somewhere, myself, my wife, Pastor Eric, Jennifer, we're on a plane, flying somewhere. And it'll be late night, you're coming back from a crusade. And then I'll pick up something in the plane, and I do a commercial for it. And then we start laughing. Then Jennifer she does a commercial, he does a commercial. It's like a whole marketing thing. We've just been doing that for years, you know. So try this new Cheeto, you know, and we are guaranteed to, you know, whatever.
So I want to just fast forward to getting in, you know, we get married. My wife runs marketing, I run sales. Our company explodes. But this is the part I wanted to get into. When we got radically on fire for God and saved and radically on fire for God, you know, we made a lot of money. And when you make a lot of money or you work very, very, very hard, you're always goal-oriented. You set these carrots in front of you, set these perks in front of you, like I'm going to take this trip, I'm going to get this car, I'm going to do this or whatever. And it was awesome. But when we got radically on fire for God, what happened was God started to touch our treasure. because where your treasure is, there is your heart. And we were already givers. Now, this is the part that's crazy. We were tithers and givers, but we started to set kingdom goals. When you talk about kingdom business, like I always tell people, do you have a kingdom business or do you have a castle business? A kingdom business is truly to advance the kingdom. A castle business, you can say you're a Christian, but it's really all just about you. You have a kingdom church or you have a castle church. So we started setting kingdom goals, and then we said if we hit this sales volume, there was 6 ministries at that time that had really impacted our life, and we said we're going to put this amount in each one of these 6 ministries. So we started setting kingdom goals to advance the kingdom of God for ministries that were winning souls and doing different things. So we started, and that's really what started us to where we ended up answering the call.
You guys found us, and your wife started giving all your money to RMI.
That's right. I had a radical encounter with God, and then obviously get called in. I never in a million years ever dreamed, thought, ever wanted to preach. Never once in a million years. It was never part of any. I just wanted to be a multimillionaire by the time I was 40. That was it. And just to finish with that, I just want to say on the kingdom business side, I always ask people when I meet them, what's your kingdom goal? Business people, entrepreneurs, most don't have it. Most don't have a kingdom goal. They have a portfolio. They have a personal goal. They know where they want to live, what they want to establish, what their legacy is going to be.
But it's not attached to eternity.
It's not attached to eternity. It's not. That's where we say kingdom business. It's not a kingdom goal. So like if you said, what's your kingdom goal? Here's the answer. Oh, yeah, man, I'm going to make a lot of money. My tithe is going to be huge. Man, I'm going to give. But then if you ask anybody that's successful, that makes money, if you ask them what your personal goals, when you look ahead 30 or 40 years, they can lay out their portfolio, their real estate, they can lay it out. I mean, they'll take 20 minutes laying out everything, but on the kingdom side, it's not there. So you have to attach, and these guys you have to attach everything to kingdom. And when you say character, you always say your anointing will get you there, but your character will keep you there. But if you don't have character, and if you're not grounded, on the Word of God in a local church, the problem is when we teach kingdom business, you always tell us to preach the warnings, because the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. So all evil is rooted in greed, and that as an entrepreneur and a business person, or even not even a business person, any person, is something you're going to have to deal with, because pride, when you start getting empowered with wealth, you can get very prideful, you can get very greedy, and you can be taken out. That's why you need a pastor that can look in your eyes, not to control you, but to say, hey, what's going on? You have to have that balance in kingdom, to be a kingdom entrepreneur, to be a multimillionaire, one of the 300. Are you still humble? Are you still teachable? Are you still get behind a local vision? Are you advancing the kingdom of God? And we unfortunately have seen many, many, many pitfalls of people, whether it's a lot of money or a little money, getting taken out because of greed. That's why we got to have the balance, as we teach here, the balance of everything.
Yeah, we almost, like you frighten people away, not to frighten them away, but to actually warn them, because God will hold us responsible if we don't preach the full counsel of God. Then the guy goes off, makes millions, dumps his wife, runs off serving the devil, and he goes to hell. Yeah. Are you with me? So I can't have that on my watch. And so that's why we preach the warning label.
We hit it hard with people in kingdom business. And the last thing I'm going to say is when, especially if you don't come from any type of money or, a silver spoon in your mouth, when you're a little kid, you can dream. I want to be the president. You can do it, Johnny. I want to be a firefighter. You can do it. I want to be a doctor. You can do it. But it's something about when you get older. It's like, man, I would like to be, a surgeon. You got money? Where's your money? Who's going to pay for it? So everybody will come against you.
Be a race car driver.
That's right.
Don't you want to win?
I want to go fast. You ain't first, you're last. Here's what I'm saying. You have to. That's why I felt in this conference what has been happening was God was enlarging people's capacity to believe Him for big things. And that's why it's important, because your limitation is your mind. Your limitation is actually you. It's not anything else. And the hardest decision I ever made in my life when I was very young was to quit those 2 jobs I had that were paying me a guaranteed salary, the mechanic job and the dispatcher job.
So that was like a comfort blanket to you, and you held on to that. Had you held on to that, you would never gone anywhere.
Everything in me, the way I was raised, said you keep that. And then maybe if a full-time job came on for something, I would have took that was guaranteed. But when I started making more in direct sales than both of those jobs, when I made the decision, I say at that time in my life is the biggest decision I ever made, when I made the decision to leave the guaranteed income behind, because in direct sales, I could see there was no cap. I could see there was a way that I could achieve everything that I wanted. When I quit those two jobs, for me, it was at that time in my life the biggest decision I ever made, and it was very scary. It was very scary because there's no guaranteed salary, there's no guaranteed pay, if you don't get out and bust your tail and work it, you don't make a penny. There's no one to bail you out. So, I mean, I realized looking back, God was leading me the whole way, but a lot of people don't step out and do what they're called to do because of that fear factor, you know, that's in their life. So, anyways.
That's phenomenal. My friends here. Yeah, give them. Wow, 911. Okay, so yeah, you are, and of course, you come from a totally different background, but what was your first enter into business or money, and how did you break the mold, living where you live, the whole culture, the tribe, and just everything? Do you want to take a moment?
Yeah. Thank you very much. What helped me, of course, is my wife. We've been married for 46 years. You know, she used to call me handsome. I said, oh, wow, I felt good, you know, until I realized when she wanted money, she said, handsome, money over, handsome.
Very good.
And now, in our culture, we give names, right? And now she calls me surplus. That's my new name, surplus. You know, I guess I started off when I saw what was happening in our backyard. Now, I'm a son of a hunter, fisherman, and trapper. So other people saw our people as, oh, they're just hunting, gathering society. But I saw my dad as a businessman. He had a product. He had fur. So my approach was totally different from others. And I saw what was happening to our communities. I saw mining companies, forestry companies coming to our area. And I grew up in what they call conditions, third world conditions. And I wanted to change that. You know, and
So how old were you at the time?
I was very young. I was probably 16 when I started
So
speaking.
16, you're looking at the state of your community,
Yeah.
your whole tribe.
Yeah.
Roads are terrible.
Yeah, we had nothing, you know, no clinics, no schools. We were accessible only by airplane. It was a flying community. You know, we did have a small grocery store, but once the grocery store, after 2 or 3 weeks, food is gone, you better know how to hunt, how to fish, and how to gather berries.
So if you
etc.
didn't know how to do that, you starved to death.
Practically, yes, yeah. But at the age of 24, I became a chief. And I decided that I was going to make change. I learned to call forth those things that be not as though they were. I started out speaking things, you know, that my people were going to be. I became what I call a nation builder. And I'm thankful for the gospel that came into our area. And I started applying those principles. When I accepted to be chief, I made $300. That's all I made. I could have made more if I was on welfare, because about 95% of my community was on welfare. That's when I learned how to trust, that my trust is in God. I will not trust in governments. I will not put my trust in the federal, provincial governments. So from there, I started negotiating, you know, which led me to many businessmen. But I did not, when I was among businessmen, I hang around people that knew more than I did, and I would keep my mouth shut. And I would rarely ask any questions, you know, until I was asked to speak. So I learned a lot from these business people. So I became a founder of a company called Crico, and with that we started with aviation, the de Havilland plane, We had one plane. Today we have 19 Dash 8s. We're the main feeder into from Montreal to the north. We have a Cree energy company, diesel, aviation, gas, oil. We have all that. Cree energy company. We're into real estate. We own hotels. We're now presently building one of the tallest buildings in Montreal, downtown Montreal. We own. I looked at how much we had. It's in the billions, and I figured, hey, we're giving a lot of money to banks. Why don't we start our own bank? Which we did. We have a First Nations bank, and we have partners with it. I learned a lot about banks. I was a director for 6 years. Oh my goodness, you don't want to know. When you see someone walking into the bank, he's going to make $1 million in his lifetime, and you try to get as much as you can from them. Sorry about that.
There you learn. There you learn what banks are. Okay. So now, the condition of the overall your nation was what financially? Give me a number.
Right now, or
no, where they were then when you became Grand Chief.
Well, when I became chief, first of all,
Okay.
My budget was $60,000
For the whole trout?
for my community, and the rest probably got less, what we call core funding.
Okay.
So-
So what would you say would be the combined for the Cree Nation in Quebec?
Back then, probably about let's see, average of 40 times 6. It's about 100,000.
About 100,000,
yeah.
okay? And just so you could see what he's done in all these years, what is it now?
When I left, I set up a trust company. We manage over $5 billion.
Yeah! Come on!
Praise God, praise God. And you know what? Imagine me when we sit down and talk about our financial statements and explaining to our people. I'm a Cree. We don't have in my language $1 million. We don't have in my language
It's not
$1 billion.
there?
It's not there. So how do I explain to the people? I'd say we used to meet outside. Okay, we used to meet outside, and there's a lake there. It's a peninsula way over there, and I'd say, see that peninsula way over there? As far as you can see, and all the trees that are there. That's about how much money we have. They'd all say, okay, that's good. You know why they could understand that? Because tree gives life. With tree, we have our material culture. Tree is a shelter. Tree shelters animals. I could go on and on, but
No. I mean, they need to know this stuff because people don't have any concept. I would say that many Americans have no concept of money whatsoever. They don't even know what $1 million means. So really, in Israel, about $1 million or 10 million or whatever, to them it's just some numbers. They don't understand it. And I think because people don't understand money, they don't know how to use it when it comes. And when it comes and they say I've got so much, they squander it or lose it. So carry on, because isn't that amazing? So you see, from here to there, all those trees, that's how much money we have. But I mean, he can go further with all the fish in there, and the eagles, and the bears, and the moose, and everything. So did that?
So we went from there. We have our own school boards. We have our own health boards. We manage millions and millions of dollars. One time, I was driving down a highway. We have 14 transmission lines crisscrossing our territory. And we were driving down, and I saw this big transmission line on top. I saw a big wire, and I said, what is that? So I called the president of Hydro-Quebec, and they said, it's a bandwidth. Oh, bandwidth. That means you have fiber optic lines. So we negotiated. Now we have fiber optic lines, internet into our community. I became the chairman of the communications side. So we connected our people, Just looking around and see what's around you. When I saw the forestry and mining companies, I studied them. I knew exactly, let's say a truck, an 18-wheeler, they made $100,000 taking trees from our land, taking them down south, and we did not get any benefit. So I spoke, I said, any extraction of natural resources within our territory, we will get the benefit. And I started negotiating with mining companies. We have diamond company, we have a gold company, we have zinc company, we have copper.
Because this is all your resources.
Yeah, exactly.
They just pillage it.
Exactly. So I decided that we're going to negotiate. So I negotiated 9 what you call benefit impact agreements. They were worth millions of dollars, millions. Same with forestry companies, negotiated again millions of dollars. But the one thing that bothered me was that when I became chief, they told me, you're on a reserve land. Here in North America, if you're an American, you'll understand when I say reservations. When I was chief, they told me 3 by 3 square kilometers. That's what you're responsible for. You're talking to a son of a hunter whose trapline hunting ground is 30 by 60 square kilometers of land, and you're telling me I'm going to manage 3 by 3? You got to be kidding me. I'm going to change that. And we are the only group in Canada that is exempted from a legislation called Indian Act. In Canada, there's an act. There's not an act for the Jews, for Italians, for the Greeks, but there's an act for Indians that dictates every aspect of our lives. You cannot do nothing without the government's approval. I decided I would change that, and we did. That legislation is not applied to us. See, what was I doing? I'm going to make sure we have our land back. So the government announced an $82 billion project to extract natural resources from our lands. I decided, ain't going to happen. I started talking to my leaders, and I said, look, we're going to negotiate, and I have a plan. And I've been involved in nation building for a long time. I've thought about these things. I'm going to get our land back, because if I get our land back, they can't do anything without my consent, without our involvement. And they cannot extract any natural resources without our consent, whether it's oil, any kind of ore, trees, oil, you name it. Or water. They cannot do nothing. So I decided that, hey, we're going to sit down with the government, which we did. I told them, you think you're going to open the territory and extract natural resources from our lands without our consent? It ain't going to happen. So he said, so what do you suggest? Out of my spirit. I knew that I would be able to achieve what I had always declared, that we will have our land back. And I said, we will set up a Cree Nation government of 70,000 square kilometers of land. We will put aside and create a regional government of 300,000 square kilometers of land. We will manage and control the 70,000 square kilometers of land. Unfortunately, we cannot get rid of the non-natives that live with us. I will agree that they will sit with us, and we will have a say what happens. So without firing a bullet or taking my bow and arrow, we now manage and control 400,000 square kilometers of land. And when you have land, there's resources. So we control actually the transportation, aviation, and all the mining companies and the forestry companies into our territory. They have to sign agreements with us. So my nation is very blessed, and I grab a hold of those principles of seed time and harvest time, giving and receiving, sowing and reaping. And I taught my chiefs so that I could prepare them, so that when we have those companies, which we did, that they will learn when we disperse those funds, our people are blessed. If your people are blessed, they will pay their tithes and offerings, and as I'm sitting here, I plan to bring them here. I'm sure they will agree, and you will hear them from their own mouths, because now they're becoming presidents and chairmen of the companies that we founded, and how it's blessed our people and how they're managing those funds, And when you're a leader,
Do you think we could bring some of those leaders to the men's conference?
oh, I'm planning. I was sitting there. I'm
No,
already
because the
planning.
men's conference is going to
Yeah.
be kingdom business, and this is going to be this week, but on not steroids. That's not a good word, but it's going to be another level.
Yeah.
Because I was saying to Pastor Eric before, and I've said to my wife, there's so many things that I want to talk on a high level that's involving millions and billions, but I feel like I lose some people because they're just trying to pay their rent. The group is so diverse. So you got, he's in the top 500 companies as he is. This year we'll go into the top 10. You knocking it out the ballpark. I mean, just what the valuation of your corporation is. Yeah, he's dealing with the whole nation. We're dealing with the kingdom. Pastor Eric's with me in this whole thing, and so and it's huge, and so that would.
It's amazing. When I'm sorry, your name is Mike. Yeah.
Miguel.
Miguel, yeah, sorry. When you were speaking, I was very encouraged, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow. And the Lord reminded me in 2021. I had negotiated a $300 million deal, because you were talking about the billions. And then last Friday, I flew to Vancouver, because that was the only time that the Minister of Indian Affairs was available for a press conference. And I completed a deal of $2.8 billion. That 325 First Nation communities will benefit. There's 673. Only 325 believed that we could do something that's never been done before. And those are the ones that benefit.
So
Yet,
the
the
other
other
ones
ones will not benefit.
Are excluded.
They're excluded.
They could have jumped on board.
They could have jumped on board. They would have benefited, but they won't. Because they didn't believe in what we were doing. Because we're doing something that has never been done before. Yeah. I was very encouraged by that. Thank you.
Isn't that awesome? So I think what you realize here, everything is accelerated because of the anointing. Everything accelerated from him, the anointing. The same with Pastor Eric. Now, obviously, they laid aside their business, but they're part of the 44 million decisions that have come into Christ. They're part of this ministry. Him and Jennifer, like, Lord have mercy, they are part of this ministry as much as I am, my wife. So, and these guys, what they're doing, the vision for the harvest of souls that drives them in your company and what you're doing. So, all right, let me deal with something else here. So, we've covered so much. How many found this very informative? All right. So, what would you say, and I'll start with you, Tim, again, and then we'll run around this thing. What would you say to anybody who's sitting here who has a company, and they've even had it for like 3 or 4 years, but it's just kind of clicking over? It's just clicking over. Are they in the wrong company? Is there something wrong? What would you say, like in a quick assessment of their business? Obviously, it's apples to apples and oranges and whatever we understand, but just in your gut feeling, what would you tell them to do from this day, the 28th day of January? What do they do that they move forward and that company sees growth?
So I think the starting point is really verifying, are you in the place you're supposed to be? Is that the territory that the Lord's given you, and is that the company? But once you know that and you're looking for how you get the company to the next level or the breakthrough, I think it's a combination of one, starting with a large vision for where you want to take it, because I don't believe that if you're, I've heard this said before, even ministers, if I'm in ministry, then I'm going after, as many souls as I can get, and if I'm in business, I'm going after as much wealth as I can get. And so you have to think, beyond just getting by. There's so many people that the reason they're kind of stuck is really, what Pastor Eric said, the limitations in their mind. They're looking really to pay their bills. They're looking really to, get by and to give some good offerings. And, for me, what really I think has propelled me is because I've sat under the anointing and I've let the vision for nations get in my spirit, man. And so then you start to feel dissatisfied with $1 million or $5 million or $10 million or even $100 million because the vision's so great and the work is so great and the finances that are needed. So first is just extending the vision. If we said to you, well, you're in this industry, do you believe you're in the right one? Yes. Well, then you're there to dominate in that industry. So look at the very top companies that exist and look at their business model. And that's when it moves into the practical side, is that you start to just really be, cutthroat with yourself and with your own business, and ask yourself, what is the difference between you and the business that's succeeding? Because there are principles in every industry. There's a millionaire. In almost every industry, there's a billionaire. There's millionaires in the trash collecting business. So find out what they do and go follow those proven principles, and humble yourself to go learn, and be willing to make the changes. Which, like Miguel said, the changes always start in me. Anytime I didn't like something I was seeing in my business, in my sales organization, I remember a year where I'd been doing really well, and I decided to make a change. And it was actually the last year Pastor Ryan worked with me, and I stepped away from running my own team, and I stepped away from selling, on my own. And so I took a major hit on my income, because I was making about $300,000 a year just off my personal sales, and another $300,000 off my team, and then the rest was my region. So I walked away from almost $600,000 just to focus on the region, and then the region was doing worse. And so, I was in this very frustrated place. Like, I've made these changes, and now I'm going to make less money just off the one part, and it was supposed to take over the other two. So I went and I prayed, and two things really. I looked at the practical. I went to a guy that was doing amazing, and I saw a couple tips. So I would recommend that. And then I just started with myself, and I went to the drawing board in my own life, and I realized I had gotten lazy with my personal routine in the morning and just the other things I was doing. And so I made adjustments physically, with my diet, with my sleep, spiritually, with my morning routine, and my time with the Lord, and then really just my confession, my faith, and then the practical work in that day. And just started one day at a time making those changes, and that ripple effect led to me having the best second half of a year, and we went from being 3% down to about 16% up, and I actually still end up making a little bit more money that year. And then the following years after that, those changes led to crazy growth the next number of years. And so
what you're saying is, you have to be willing, even though you've been going along this and you've been successful, you have to be willing to make changes en route. There's always going to be changes.
Yeah, and the changes are both internal and then obviously in your business. Everything does start with you. So, like, can you say you're at your best as a business leader right now? If you were asked, are you at the very best you've ever been? You may not be able to control the economy and the things that are happening in your industry, but you can control yourself. And so we have no excuse not to be at our best, regardless of what we're in, And so I took accountability for where I was at personally and made changes. Even, again, into the practical stuff, like the way I was eating, the way I was sleeping, just changes that all lead to momentum.
You wouldn't recommend staying up all night, 2, 3, eating in places?
Noodles, no, not at 3 in the morning.
You wouldn't.
I was traveling the country, and I was trying Cinnabons, or not different Cinnabons in every state, and so I did.
You were the tester.
Yeah, I was just I was
Politics.
on a tour. I was anyway. My assistant actually sent me a message. She's like, "I'm sorry if I'm being too forward, but I've seen a lot of purchases of Cinnabons on in the recent things. Is there an issue?" And I was like, maybe. It was good timing, her word of rebuke. But so I made changes, for myself. Practically and spiritually, because it starts in both places. And then it's crazy how we work as humans, but when you make a small change, you don't have to actually totally fix the problem to feel momentum. And so it was really just the act of, like, I'm going to bed at this time. I'm cutting these things out of my diet. I'm going to exercise in the mornings. I started listening to preaching. I heard Pastor Jonathan, say that he listened to preaching every day. And I'm like, wait, he preaches every day because he was doing like a daily broadcast, and he listens to preaching every day? And I'm like, I'm not even ministering every day. It was just once in a while. And why would I not be listening to preaching every single day? So I made that part of my morning routine, getting like, I would wake up, and I realized I could get like 3 hours of ministry just into my spirit, man. And then, so all of those things, within a week, it was like I was a different man. And then I just brought that new momentum that was in here now into my business every day. And you just start making better choices. And obviously I was in the sales business, and so I had all these leaders. So then I went to every leader. It took me like 2 months, and I challenged every leader to make the same changes I was making. Change this, change this, change this. And it was the second half of that season, we had a total turnaround in our business. And again, and statistically, your second half is always a little bit lower. And then the last thing I really did is I went back to a word the Lord had given me like 4 years before. Because, again, you can do everything in the natural, but like I said on Tuesday, there's always the hand of God ultimately pushes us over. And so I had a word from the Lord from like 5 years before that the second half would be greater. And I realized that wasn't specific to that year. I could use that every year. And so I just decided to dust that word off. And I started saying it every day. I said it to my sales guys. I said it on my podcast. I got it into my spirit and into the spirit of every one of my sales guys, which, not all of them were saved. We saw a turnaround and ended the year up. And then that momentum has literally carried me till I, retired 7 months ago with 25 to 40% growth, like 4 or 5 years in a row, which is unheard of. I went from being the fourth largest to the last 2 years, I was the most successful, likely the most successful door-to-door division in American history with what we produced within that organization, within security sales.
Phenomenal. So, yeah. I'd like to do a little research into who made these chairs, because these are the most uncomfortable chairs I've ever sat on in my life. I just let
business
you know.
idea for someone: make some good chairs, and you got your first clients right here.
It's bad. I mean, I'll be happy when I get off of this thing. It's, man, it's uncomfortable. Do you know what I'm talking about? We could do with one of those cushions from up there, but anyway. Google it. They went bankrupt 15 years ago. Okay. Miguel, so they're stuck in the doldrums and don't go anywhere. What do you say?
So I would say, one of the first things that I notice with people that are stuck and are trying to get out of it, I would give them one advice, and I would say, listen to understand, not to respond. Because a lot of people are stuck where they're at, and that's all they're living in. And so whenever you're hearing wisdom, you cannot wait for the moment to speak what you're going through. No, you got to listen. You got to listen to understand, not to respond. And whenever you begin to take this position, in your heart, that you don't have it all figured out, then God begins to find your heart promotable. And whenever he finds your heart promotable, he promotes your relationships before he promotes you. So you're ready to begin to listen to advice, listen to instruction. And so this is one of the things that I had a conversation, with this billionaire, and, we were negotiating the deal, and it was, it was about a $50 million deal. And, and one of the things that I said to him, I said, one of the things that I teach my people is that whenever they're in any situation, and I love what you say, Chief, is that, you gotta be able to listen. You gotta be able to humble yourself, because you got so much going on and you think you're building this great, amazing thing. Well, there's other people that have done greater things. And there's other people that, have gone ahead of you. And so in whatever situation you're at, it doesn't matter who it is, somebody has gone ahead. in you listening and you sitting down and seeing what God is trying to teach you and tell you, through that person, is what's going to make the change. So, this billionaire, we were talking about this, and he said, Miguel, can you stop for a second? And I said, yeah. I said, this is the things that we teach our people to begin to become successful. And he said, wait a minute. And he grabs a napkin, and he begins to take notes. This is a billionaire. His net worth is about $20 billion right now. And he said, I'm sorry, I was listening to respond based on my experience and not to understand. I'm going to make that change right now. This is somebody that runs a $20 billion budget. And so, and he said, please. And then at the end, when I was walking out of the office, he was like, can you please sign the napkin? Because I've never heard that before.
And one thing you find about people that are top entrepreneurs and CEOs, they do a lot of stuff on a napkin.
Yes. Look,
They write notes on napkins, direction on napkins, sermons on napkins. I'm telling you.
Because
you're in a restaurant,
Yeah.
not on the restaurant's napkin, but on a paper towel.
Yeah. The greatest soccer player, his name is Messi, who, if you like Ronaldo, too bad,
Revival has come to us.
But the greatest, the greatest soccer player in the world, Messi.
You're a good man. Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Whew.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Jesus. What was I thinking?
There was a problem, and Pastor Ronnie came up with a solution. That's
I'll
business.
tell you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm so much more comfortable now.
Sorry, I apologize.
I can
guys.
sit here for another 10 minutes. No, I'm kidding. But the greatest soccer player in the world, his contract was drawn on a napkin, but that's beside the point. That's what I've noticed in people. God is always going to promote your relationships, but it's whenever you're ready to listen. If you're not ready to listen, you're going to stay where you're at. And then once you humble yourself, once you're able to listen, once you're able to be mentored, you begin to realize that there's a lot of things that you need to learn, and you got to escape your current situations, because you might be, worried about your bills, about your car, or your business is not going to the next level. It's time to get out of that place and get into a place of humility and humbleness and be able to listen. God's always going to speak to you if you're willing to listen. And then the next thing, when you humble yourself, when God, really promotes your relationship, so you can begin to learn and grow spiritually and practically, you got to be accountable. I've never seen a business or a man change that is not accountable. It just doesn't exist. You got to have a level of accountability on your spiritual principles and on your practical principles. Both of them go hand in hand. And so if you want to get out of quickly out of where you're at, you can begin to apply these principles, because the wealth is not in the money, it's in the principles. That's really where is it at, It's, wealth is in the principles of sowing and reaping. That's in the principles, your character. Do unto others as you want, them to do to yourself. And then I would say the biggest tipping point is create something where you can raise people up. That is your number one goal. Jesus rose disciples. It was 12 of them, and look, we're talking about it right now. So it's your business is going to be directly connected to raising up people with kingdom principles and practical principles. And when you begin to focus about raising people up, and you make that your priority, and then you're a man of covenant, you're a man of focus, you're under authority, you can begin to teach these things, and then you'll experience an acceleration in your life. So, I would say those are very important things for anyone in whatever situation you're in. That is always somebody that has gone ahead, and being under the anointing, listening, take notes. My goodness, my phone is going to be worth billions of dollars because of the notes I took. Take notes, write it down. You're able to remember it. The Holy Ghost is going to highlight things that pastor says, and then you're going to be able to take that and apply it into your business. If you don't write it down, you're just going to keep it into your head, and then you're going to go think that you got to pay rent next week. And so you're going to forget the principle. So one of the things that I celebrated the most whenever I was with, with Christy was not the fact that we got $1 million, not the fact that I got a job, not the fact that I got a promotion, but I celebrated the most the fact that I finally understood the principles. Because that's what's going to take you out of where you're at today. The principles will take you out of where you are today. They will put you on a solid ground. They're all biblical principles. They're all led by the Holy Ghost. You got to have a vision. You got to be connected to a vision. You got to be able to listen. And there is something that I would say that I worked really hard with is when I receive instruction, I want to be the first one to apply. I would say that separates me from many. I mean, it didn't matter where I was sitting here at the river 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, I was sitting back there and they were eating fried chicken and they were trying to offer it to me. And I said, no, I'm paying attention. But it didn't matter where I was sitting. I could have been in the last seat of the church, but I would be the first one to apply whenever I walked out. And that needs to be you. You need to be quick to apply. That's the only knowledge worth anything is the one that is applied. The only wisdom worth anything is the one that is applied. And you need to be consistent, you need to be relentless, and you need to be focused. And when you have a vision, think big. Think big. Do not limit yourself according to your rent or your car right now. Attach yourself to the vision of the house, and then God is going to open horizons and doors that you've never even thought about because you're connected to a vision. And so I would say that's a key to get you out of the situation. Don't be in the whirl of your situations right now. Think outside of the box like Pastor Rodney's been talking about. So I would say that's very, very important for everyone that is here at any stage. Somebody has gone ahead, listen to understand, not to respond.
Powerful. Now, of course, all these principles apply directly to ministry. Because we deal with pastors, they're stuck, well, the church is not growing. Yeah, but you're not even listening. Every time you talk to them, they're always moaning about the problem, and this happened, and then that happened, then I got a prophecy, and then this happened, and the lady, then they stole the car, and then they set us back, and then he cursed me, and I don't know what all. So you can't help that guy. It's just impossible. Or the evangelist. I don't know what, my meetings, there's no meetings open for me. Well, I mean, what are you doing? Why? What are you preaching? Let me hear what you're preaching. Well, I wouldn't book you. Who wants to listen to that? You know what I'm saying? So, and then when you went, what did you actually leave behind? Did you make yourself invaluable in that church? Did they say, we needed that? There was something that came from heaven that was exactly the bolt of lightning that we needed to take us to another level? Or were you just in a maintenance mode because you're trying to carve out a little niche of a unique subject that you carry to the world that's not even necessary? But if you just preach the Bible, it would be sufficient, And so whatever is being said here is directly applied into areas of ministry. And, and that's why we here at the River have tried to make it available. You can come here. If you're a minister, you can go through every area. It'll take you 3 hours to tour this ministry, to look into the different divisions of the ministry, why we do what we do, and all of everything from the helps ministry behind the scenes and everything that takes to run this whole mechanism, from the university to the church to all the schools linked to that, to the crusades and the growing now. I mean, everything. There's many wheels in this, and many cogs in this whole thing. And if one's not working right, it affects every area. So, and we make it available. If you're a pastor of a church, you can come. We'll show you everything. You can take you, show you. I'll tell you everything. I mean, there's nothing to hide. We're here to help. And the same goes for Kingdom Business. That's why we have Kingdom Business every first and the third Tuesday of the month, for you to go. Some say, well, it's boring, I heard that stuff. But it doesn't matter. You're still there with people, iron sharpens iron, and you're listening to what's going on. And then we are endeavoring to replicate this in every church to build kingdom business with the same stuff so you can mobilize your people to be raised up so that they can enter into what God has. Now, okay, so let's go to you, Pastor Eric, then we'll go to you, and then I'm going to take everybody through the vow of prosperity. So, okay, they're stuck in a rut. What do they do?
Well, someone's in business, they've been successful, they're stuck in a rut. Well, first thing is whatever you try to maintain goes backwards. Okay, you can't maintain a business, you can't maintain a church. So whatever you maintain goes backwards. Like in a church, since you are related to ministry a lot, because we travel all over the world and we see churches get stuck at a certain number, just like a business. Well, most of the time, those churches or businesses are not doing what they did to become successful. They stop doing what made them successful. And they forget, like I give a church. You go to a mega church, or to a big church, you talk to the pastor. Almost always it starts off something like this. Well, man, I had a call in my life. I started in my living room. I had 6 people. We got so excited. We knocked on every door, told everybody in our neighborhood to come. Then we outgrew our garage. Then we got a little storefront. And then, man, we started home Bible studies. We started meeting business people. And they go through this whole thing. And then they built this great thing. They don't do any of that stuff anymore. They don't have evangelism. They don't reach out. So when you have momentum, if you have momentum, your business or your ministry is going to grow. When you lose momentum, momentum loss is the hardest thing to get again. That's why you have to keep momentum. So whatever you maintain goes backwards. So if you got a church of a couple hundred people and you're not winning the loss, you're not getting new people in and all that, you're going to have people get transferred, people move, people backslide, people die, and the numbers are going to keep going down. Same thing with business. What is it that you're doing in business that makes you money? Like a lot of times in business, when someone hits a rut, they stop doing the things that make them money. Like in sales, a lead equals an appointment, an appointment equals a presentation equals a sale, which equals a lead. It's a cycle. If you look at the cycle of that cycle, if you take any part of that out, a business owner a lot of times misses the marketing or the new business side. So you can have a restaurant that has a great restaurant where people are coming in, but if you don't advertise or get the people that come in to tell other people and you lose that side of it, then you're going to slowly start to go backwards. And what happens is people form bad habits. When you talk about habits, like in Bible school, a lot of times when I'm teaching in Bible school, because we see this a lot with Bible, even though it's not related to maybe, like we're teaching ministry gifts. My wife and I are teaching ministry gifts in Bible school right now. First thing I did when I went in, I said, I got an assignment for you. And if you don't do this, you're going to fail the class. You ready? Make your bed every day. Why do I say that? Because, and then every day that I go in, I said, did you make your bed? Why? Because after you make your bed for 26 days, you won't even remember you made your bed and you made your bed. So you have to form good habits. But the problem with habits is you can form bad habits. So in business or in ministry, what happens through time is you form these habits. Like you said, going out and getting the donuts all the time. So you form habits that have the results that you might not like. So you have to form good godly habits. And so I would say momentum, you need to get momentum going again. And you have to look at why your business is being maintained. Like we talk about innovation, and you talk about this a lot, Pastor Rodney, is you went from the 8-track to the cassette to the CD, and then everything went digital. Well, if you were in the film industry or picture industry and you would develop film, and then the digital came out, if you weren't looking ahead to make those changes, like, hey, my company's got to get away from processing film to getting in the digital, you also have to take a look at where you're at and see if your industry is changing, what's happening, what innovation you can put in place. So first thing is, I would say, you're maintaining. And if your business is in a rut, it's because you're in a rut. And the amount of time and effort you put to build that business, you're going to have to do it again. You're going to have to kick yourself in the butt.
It's almost like returning to your first love. Like do the first works. So as a minister, been going for 20, 30, 40 years, You just go, okay, you can fast and pray, you can get ready for the new year, but you should pretend, and I actually do this, okay? So what I do is I actually pretend that I'm starting all over the ministry again. So when the moment the new year begins, this is the beginning of it. Right? I'm starting the ministry.
Well, what you always say, which is what we need to learn from, is you always look back. You always say this. You always look back at the last year, and you're a fruit inspector. You look at what produced fruit and what didn't produce fruit. But you're not. I'm not afraid is not the right word, but you're not. You have no problem cutting something out that's not
No,
producing
because
fruit.
we're not going to maintain something for purpose of image. If it's not producing, it's dead
And
wood,
that's
it has
that's
to go.
the problem in business.
Yeah.
People keep maintaining something, and it might have produced fruit at one time, but it's not producing fruit now. But they're not willing to change it because this is just the way it is. You know, so you have to be able to make those adjustments and make those changes. So you have to start working hard. Again, you got to start doing what made you successul.
Okay.
And then
Let me maybe say something about that, because I'm in the cattle industry now, and I have 40 Angus. We got 20 that we're going to get pregnant, and I started studying the beef industry. So when you look at the farms across America, let me talk about people that have huge cattle operations. Those older farmers are dying off because they can't maintain. There's no money to be made in beef, because what they do, they're in the habit of taking their cows to market and selling a cow. You never sell a cow. You never take a cow and just sell the cow. Because on the market, the thing's going for $800 or $1,000, whatever. You sell a cow by the pound. You don't sell a cow. Somebody said, I'd like to buy a cow. I don't sell cows. I sell pieces of them. I sell steak. I sell filet mignon. I sell T-bone. You can buy a T-bone, but you can't buy a cow. But I'd really like to buy a cow. If you're going to buy my cow, it's going to cost you about between $12,000 to $15,000 for one cow, because that's what it'll give me if I break it down by the pound. So suddenly now, your cattle business, all the people that are succeeding in the meat industry today are the people that take the cows. If you've got 300 cows, you can work that out. You can work that out per cow. I mean, if you got a high certified Angus, and then especially now what we're doing, we cross with Wagyu, you got the F1. Angus goes for like $50 a pound. The F1 goes for between 75 to 99, and then the Wagyu stuff, that's going for $150 a pound. So everything's taken, packaged, and shipped. But the old farmer has been doing it for years. He can't say, no, we just take him to the market and sell it. And I saw somebody sold, I could have bought 80 cattle the other day, and it would cost me 80 grand. And I thought, first of all, I didn't want to buy 80 cows because they weren't the quality meat that I was looking for. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm looking for certain quality. It has to be the best. And I want to know what they're being fed, and because what is fed is what the cow is, and then I'm eating what the cow's been fed. And I don't want to eat what he's been eating. Are you with me? So, as I was offered 80 head of cattle. I could have paid probably $86,000. You want them? You can get them. They're on the hoof. They're there. You can just pick them up. I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because I don't want that infected into my herd. I don't want those genetics into my herd. You know. So, and then I realized that even if that farmer took those, there's no reason he had to sell them for $1,000 apiece. If he turned that into steak and packaged and everything like that, do you know what he probably, I don't even have, I mean, you work it out. Okay, so let's say, no, it wasn't the highest grade cow, but if you took 80 cows and you turned it into at least $8,000 a piece, are you with me? Yeah. It's a whole bigger chunk than 80. So what I'm saying is, but the older farmers, they can't make the change because that's the way their dad did. That's the way their grandfather did. And the same with ministers. Ministers are stuck in a rut. And because, well, my father did this, my grandfather did that. Yeah, but we're living in a different hour. That doesn't mean to say you change the message or the doctrine. The message is still the same, but the way you get it out and what you do in it and how you relate to people. You know, so I'm a people person. That's why I can go ride around the lobby in a golf cart and talk to people. And I love people. A lot of ministers, they don't like people. They don't. And even people in business, I'm a sales guy. I hate people. How you buy it? You buy it. Eat the cookie. You eat the cookie. Okay. So it doesn't work that way. But what you're saying is 100%.
The last piece I'll just put in there, you know, we talked about momentum and we talk about getting into a rut, and you can't maintain. You have to always be advancing. Is the wrong people speaking into your ear? You know, like just from being in the ministry for a long time, you know, Pastor Rodney would spend, I mean, this is a common thing that would happen. He would do a mass crusade or something and paying everything, doing everything, and then other ministers and other people would come in and say, listen, we have to hit the youth at the same time. We have to do a youth rally at this same time. Like, for instance, like different things like that would happen, even though, or they would put these additives in, and then it would change the vision of what you're doing. Now, Pastor Rodney keeps straightforward. He always does what the Lord tells him to do. We're not going to add all these other things in. But in business, at least for me, and my experience of business is sometimes your top performers are squeaky hinges that need a lot of oil. And it's tough. But
you cannot do anything with high maintenance people. When it takes you 3 hours to get out of the office because you're picking them up.
Well, nobody knows how to run a business better than the person that doesn't own it. Yeah. I mean, and so the best person to have to talk about how to have a revival is one that's never actually had one, but wrote a book. So the best person to score the winning touchdown is a person that didn't even play football in high school, you know, but is in a lazy boy with a remote. So what happens is people will try to speak into you, like here you are running a company, paying all the bills, opening the door, shutting it, doing everything, putting your faith out, and then you got these people that will come and tell you what you need to do. This is really what you should do. This is what you need to do. And if you're at a weak point, let's say you're at a slow point or you don't have momentum, sometimes you can add those things in, and it's not the Lord. You can add them in thinking, oh, maybe this would fix it. And it doesn't fix it. It really takes it out, and that happens in ministry all the time.
Or trying to accommodate family.
Yeah,
you know, your brother-in-law needs a job. You bring him in, and he calls it more wreck than whatever. So your business and your ministry should not be there to hire people to help. You don't hire people to help them. You hire people to help you.
Yeah. And I would say one of the things that is on that point, Pastor, it's people are used to promoting gift and talent and not character. And when you begin to focus on gift and talent, you begin to focus on high maintenance people. And the people that are actually going to produce the most are the ones that understand character and principle. Yeah. And that's why your bedrock of your business have to be character and principle, not gift and talent. I will take any day character and principle over gift and talent, because the gift and the talent could be, God will get the humble and put them in a place of ruling based on their heart, not based on their gift or the talent, like David and Saul. So that's I would say for companies, if you're stock, do not promote gift and talent. Promote character and principle. And that means that you have to be a man of character and principle.
And that's why it's important. Yeah. That's why it's important many times. Be very careful when you bring people in from the outside, because they come with another DNA, and that's the same reason I didn't want those cows, because of the DNA they represented. Are you with me? So you bring people in, it's not that they can't be riverized. Come through 3 years and then we'll talk, because everybody that's come up in this ministry is all raised up in this ministry. So, and that's what's so beautiful about it.
I'll just say real quick, I think it's, when you are the leader of your company, the reason God put you there is he's going to speak the vision through you. So what you're saying is so true. You can get people always coming from the outside to advise, and ultimately you've got to get it in here. So even this week I've had people come up and ask me a question about, like, which direction would you take? And, at the end of the day, I can give you advice out of my head, but at the end of the day, like, this is your life, and you've got to get it in your spirit, man, because when you get out, either way, you're going to face challenges. Either way, when you get out on the water, the waves are there. So you need to know for yourself. And so it's going back to that vision that you originally had on the inside and asking yourself, like, am I still in line with this? And I've watched you do this over the years where we've started to add something and then and it wasn't producing or whatever, and it just gets removed, and we come back into the core line. And it can be easy to go, especially when you go watch someone else succeed, you have to be careful not to now just go, okay, I'll just do what they did. You got to look at the principle below what they did and then apply that to the vision the Lord's given you, and is it still in line with that? And so if you're the leader, the Lord speaks the vision to you. And so even in my own company, I've got a lot of very smart people. And, it's funny what you say, the best people that know how to run the company are the one that's never done it. I mean, that is so true. They want to tell you how they would do it, but they didn't have the pressure on their shoulders. They didn't have to pay the bills. They didn't have to raise the money. They weren't the one that took the risk, that put in the endless, nights with no sleep. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I listen to a lot of smart people, and that's where they're there. And great leaders empower their people to function in that realm and give them that ability to go run. Because if you control everything as the leader and you're all trying to micromanage, you'll never accomplish anything. You'll drive yourself crazy. So you have to empower people. But at the end of the day, when they give the advice, I always check that against what I feel in here and what the Lord showed me in here. Where are we going? And if we get off track, then it's like we're back to the core vision.
Amen. And if you really don't listen, Balaam's ass will come and visit you and talk to you. And then you'll have to make a change, Back to you. So for the ones stuck in a rut or not feel like they're going anywhere.
Pastor is correct when he says, when you're trying to do something, if you cannot share it with your wife, if your wife does not understand it, you won't make it. One will lead 1,000. Two will lead 10,000. If you can't explain what you're doing to your wife, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to have a big fight on your hands. So I commend my wife because I wouldn't be where I am. She has a lot of wisdom. And if we, sometimes we sit around and we talk, people ask us what we're doing. I'll sit back and I'll just listen to her. She can tell the same stories better than I can, and I'm just sharing them. But let me say this. When I became a young chief, I didn't want to become chief actually. The Lord actually woke me up in the middle of the night. I was in the middle of my exams. I was at McGill University. The Lord told me to write it down. And I wrote those things down. And I told the Lord, I want to be a lawyer. I have a doctor's in law, actually. But I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew I could make a lot of money. And I knew if I went back to the reserve, I would only make $300. But I heard from God. Why? Because I had a passion for my people. You got to love people. And I went out of my way to be able to be a servant to them. And I took that piece of paper. It took an unbeliever to tell me after I completed my term, everything that you said, you completed. And that's only God. And after that, I didn't know what I was going to do. I went out on the land as I normally do. I went to seek. I wasn't going to go back to school, nothing. I wanted to know what is God's plan for me. And it was only when I was out on my land, on my hunting ground, that I had an open vision. I won't share that with you, but within that open vision, that gave me a direction. And I just pursued it with passion. You got to have a passion. I pursued it with passion, with everything that I can do within my strength. And I learned to seek advice, because there is counsel in the wisdom of many. And I had to pick and choose who to listen to. With that vision, I ran with that vision. But when I accelerated, it was in room 208, when the fire of God came into a hotel room. That's when I accelerated. That's when I knew, now I got the anointing. And that propelled me to do things. If I told you some of the stories where people came to our community and would literally cry and would say, my people only dream of what you have.
When I went up to his community, I went, you have got to be kidding me. You, roads, infrastructure, and a rink, an ice rink where you could tap up, lightning could play. I was like, huh?
Yeah. Amen.
Hey, can you tell a story quickly? Just one story, then we're going to think. Tell him how you got whoever was the premier of the thing to build roads for you, because he wanted to fly by helicopter. You said, no, I'm going to drive you. So you picked him up in Shibugumu. Tell him, because you did it on purpose. The roads are potholes and whatever. And who was that? Was it the premier?
It was a minister, yeah.
The minister, and he said, I want to fly. He said, no, I want you to see. And you took him on the roughest road for how many hours?
Probably an hour and a half.
Yeah, so we got to build roads. I mean, that's how you did it. If they flew, he wouldn't have known. He just put him in the worst vehicle, the worst road. But he said, we need a road. Oh, okay, you need a road. He got the road.
True. You know, one last thing. You know, when you manage millions and billions of dollars, you will get a visit. And people will come around you. And they know you. They know where you live, your address, how many children you have, what you like. And they will try to bribe you. I love hunting, fishing. They'll make offers so they can get that contract. I mean, we have a construction company. We're making $2 billion a year. Do you think we had some visitors? Yes. Come and see you. So you have to have that character in you. You know, honesty. Love the people. I had an offer one night in the middle of the night. At about 11:45, I got a call. And they said, if you stop what you are doing right now, we will take care of you. And we will give you $32 million.
Personally.
Personally. I did not even entertain it. I had a lawyer. I called my lawyer in the middle of the night because you have to record. You have to be careful. I make sure that it's recorded so they not come after you later. So I called my lawyer, and he later told me, he said, my wife was very upset. Who called you in the middle of the night? He said, oh, Matthew called me. Oh, him again? He said, what did he offer? What is he saying? What did he ask you? And he told me he just got offered $32 million. Well, what did he say? He said, without hesitation, he said, I'm not taking it. But this is what he said. This is my lawyer. He said, I entertained it. I would have get 15% of that $32 million. He said, I entertained it. He was very honest. And then, of course, as well said, well...
Wouldn't you say that's where the problem comes, when lawyers and all these people come around, because they annexing, it's like what you said with the bank. When you walk in there, they go, okay, he's making $1 million a year. How am I going to get most of that? Exactly. So the same, I know these godly lawyers, but the same with lawyers and all of this stuff, you know. So, how many have found this very helpful today? So.